He was descending on a rope into an underground waterfall, and his companions couldn't see where he was going. At 27 minutes past noon, a sharp crack rolled up the shaft, and the rope went taut, as if a weight had suddenly hung from it. This is Diccan Pot, the wettest and meanest shaft in the famous Yorkshire system of Alum Pot. The 19th of January, 2025. 30 meters of sheer darkness. A 64-year-old caver from Durham. Why did an experienced man fall to the bottom of the first pitch? And why did the people standing at the top learn the truth only when rescuers finally reached him? Sunday, the 19th of January, 2025. Near the village of Sellside, in the parish of Horton and Ribblesdale in North Yorkshire, a group of cavers is getting ready to go underground. The place is called Dicken Pot, one of the entrances to the famous underground system of Alum Pot and Long Churn. This is not a tourist route with laid-out walkways. Diccan is a vertical, water-filled cave, visited only by those who are confident with rope descent technique. Among the group is a 64-year-old man from the Durham area in the northeast of England. For the group, it's an ordinary winter trip. Drop into the system, work down through the pitches, and be back on the surface by evening. Every one of them had done something like this dozens of times. To reach the first pitch of Diccan, you have to cross a traverse, a sideways passage along the wall that cavers move across while clipped to a fixed rope. This traverse has one important feature. Whoever stands at the top, at the head of the pitch, cannot see what is happening below. The shaft, around 30 meters deep, is hidden behind a bulge of rock. A person goes down into the darkness and the roar of water, and from a certain point, his companions can only watch the rope. At 27 minutes past noon, the descent turns into disaster. Those left at the top hear a sharp impact, a booming sound that rolls up the stone tube of the pitch. English sources render it as a short bang. Then the rope. Someone pulls on it and feels it, taut, as though a weight is hanging from it. From that second, the Sunday trip that each of them had done hundreds of times comes to an end. A rescue operation begins, and time is already working against them. You cannot reach your companion, and what happened down there, behind the bulge of rock, right at the start of the underground waterfall, nobody yet knows. Let's step back for a moment from the edge of the pitch, to the people who choose such places at all. British caving is a large and mature community. There are thousands of active cavers in the country, dozens of clubs, and a finely tuned culture of safety built up over more than 100 years. The caves of the Yorkshire Dales are, for them, not something exotic, but a familiar world they return to year after year. But within that world, Dicken Pot stands apart. You don't bring beginners or school groups here. The descent demands confident vertical technique, the habit of working while hanging on the rope, and the ability to keep a clear head in a rush of cold water. People go into a cave like this with experience, knowing exactly what they are signing up for. The man who died was 64. In caving, people don't reach that age by chance. They reach it because caves have long been part of their lives. Such people keep in shape for years, look after their gear, and go out in trusted company. His name was not officially released. British sources say only that he was from the Durham area. That day he was in a group, as is the custom in British caving, where solo descents are frowned upon. A Sunday trip in winter is a typical rhythm for people like this. On weekdays, ordinary life, work, family. On a day off, the road to the Dales and a few hours underground. And yet January in Yorkshire is not the best time for a wet cave. It's cold, the days are short. There's plenty of water after rain and snow, and any risk in such a season grows. For a man like this, the cave is hardly a chase after adrenaline. It's more like something he had been working towards for decades. And if so, it's worth understanding exactly where he was descending that day, what the Alum Pot system is, and where its side shaft got its grim reputation. On the slope of Simon Fell, at an altitude of around 343 meters above sea level, a huge chasm gapes in the ground. This is Alum Pot, one of the best-known caves in Britain. The main shaft drops away in a vertical pitch more than 100 meters deep, a dark stone tube with water roaring at the bottom. For many generations of cavers, Alum Pot has been a symbol of the Yorkshire underground, a place they strive to reach in order to test themselves. The cave was made by water and time. Rainwater has been dissolving the limestone of the Yorkshire Dales for centuries. Seeping down through the cracks, it ate away the rock, widened the passages, and in the end, assembled this system of shafts, galleries, and underground streams. What today looks like a finished vertical labyrinth is the work of tens of thousands of years, drop by drop. The history of exploring the cave goes back to the 19th century. In 1847, John Birkbeck made the first partial descent into Alum Pot from the Long Churn side, but did not reach the bottom that time. He came back a year later. In 1848, a party of 9 was lowered to the bottom of the shaft in a large tub, wound down by railway workers hired for the job. By modern standards, it looks almost insane, but that is exactly how the exploration of the Yorkshire underground began. Alum Pot is not a single hole, but the hub of a whole system. It is linked to the neighboring cave of Long Churn and to Diccan Pot. Long Churn became a popular place for beginners. It's relatively safe, and it's also home to the famous cheese press squeeze, the best-known tight spot in the Dales, which you wriggle through as if between two slabs. Long Churn and Diccan are the second and third routes to the bottom of Alum Pot. And if Long Churn is considered a school for beginners, then Diccan is its complete opposite. It is this side shaft that has earned a special, uneasy fame among British cavers. The reputation of this pitch rests on a single word: water. Dicken Pot is the wettest of the routes into the Alum Pot system. Cavers describe it without any romance, a roaring, thundering, wet pitch for the experienced. In essence, it is an underground waterfall, alongside which a person descends on a rope in a cloud of spray and the crash of falling water. The problem isn't only that it's wet, the problem is where the rope hangs. On the Diccan pitches, and especially on the first, the rigging runs right up against the falling water. Cavers who have been here call the first pitch a spray fest, a solid curtain of water dust that hits you in the face, floods your head torch, and makes every movement awkward. In dry, warm weather, it's unpleasant. In cold or high water, it's genuinely dangerous. Worse still is how quickly this cave changes. The water level in Diccan responds to rain almost instantly. A trickle, harmless at the entrance, turns within an hour or two into a torrent that hammers down on the rope from above. Hence the strict rule among experienced British cavers. You go into Diccan only after at least 2 days of dry, settled weather. Those who ignored it have more than once come to grief. January is the season when all of this works against a person. The water is cold, and there's plenty of it after the winter rains and thaw, and the short daylight leaves no margin of time. Descending into an underground waterfall at such a time is a task where the price of any small thing rises sharply. It was on the first pitch of Diccan, right at the entrance to this roaring flow, that the event at the heart of this story took place. 30 meters of vertical, water, cold, darkness, that's the whole scene. And to understand what can go wrong here, you first have to work out how a person even descends a rope like this. A descent into a vertical pitch, like the first one in Diccan, goes down a single rope. In caving, this method is called SRT, single rope technique. A person does not climb down a ladder or walk along the floor. They hang in the air on their equipment, with dozens of meters of empty space and water below them. It works like this. The caver is clipped to the rope through a descender, a device that lets you feed out the rope in a controlled way and regulate your speed. A harness on the body holds them, and additional cow's tails guard against an accidental slip. All of it is a single chain, in which every link must be able to hold a person's weight. The rope on the pitch doesn't simply hang from top to bottom. Along the way, it is anchored to the wall at several points. These intermediate anchors are called rebelays. At each rebelay, the caver has to unclip from one section of rope while hanging and clip onto the next, staying on safety the whole time. There are also deviations, short slings that pull the rope aside. Both rebelays and deviations in Diccan are needed above all to keep the rope away from sharp edges of rock and from the jet of the waterfall. And here lies the main vulnerability. Every rebelay is a moment when a person transfers their weight from one anchor to another, working with their hands high above the ground. A mistake in the order of actions, a wrongly clipped carabiner, a failure of a knot or gear at exactly that moment are unforgiving. There's nowhere to fall here but down, to the bottom of the pitch. Now add a cold, wet rope, numb fingers, and water pounding on your hands. In a dry training hall, SRT is drilled to the point of instinct. In the roaring winter Diccan, that same sequence of movements becomes a test at the very edge. Somewhere on this rope, at the first pitch, the irreparable happened to the man. that Sunday. The group enters Diccan and moves towards the first pitch. They cross the traverse, moving their carabiners along, and step by step reach the pitch head. From here, the 30-meter descent into noise and spray begins. The man from Durham comes out to the pitch and starts down. He goes down the rope into a cloud of water dust, into the roar of the underground waterfall, where his own voice is drowned in the din of water. This is familiar work for him, body on the gear, hands on the device, eyes on the next anchor point. Beyond that, his companions see nothing. The bulge of rock hides the shaft, and up top, only hearing remains, water and the tension of the rope under their fingers. And at 27 minutes past noon, everything breaks off. A sharp impact strikes up the stone tube, a bang, and then the rope goes heavy, with the weight of a person clearly hanging from it. The worst thing forms at once in the group's minds. Their companion is hanging on his gear, and hanging suspended in a cold, wet cave is dangerous in itself, even without any fall. The harness compresses the body, cold and water quickly drain your strength, and the count runs in minutes. But he can't be seen. There's no way to descend to him quickly and safely, and it isn't even clear whether he is injured, stuck, or unconscious. In this blind, roaring darkness, there's only one option. Call the people who know how to pull others out of the ground. The call went to the Cave Rescue Organization, or CRO for short. It is the oldest cave specialist rescue service in the world. It is based in the Yorkshire village of Clapham, and has been responsible for underground accidents in the Dales for many decades. Its backbone is volunteers, ordinary people ready at any moment, in any weather, to drop what they're doing and go underground to save a stranger. All of British cave rescue rests on people like this. CRO cannot delay. A man in a pitch will not wait. Having received the report of the incident at Diccan Pot around 27 minutes past noon, the service set out for Sellside. The location complicates any operation. Sellside is remote country on the edge of the Dales, and the approach to the cave runs across a private farm and open slopes. You can't drive an ambulance right up to it. The equipment, ropes, a stretcher, lowering systems, has to be carried on your back all the way to the pitch head. The task of the first rescuers is simple to state and extremely hard in practice. Reach the casualty as fast as possible and work out his condition. The rescuers prepare for vertical work, to descend the pitch, reach the person hanging or lying below, and organize a hauling operation. While the team makes its way to the cave and sets up its gear, the dead man's companions remain at the top. They stand by the taut rope, at the edge of a blind shaft, from which only the roar of water rises. They cannot do more than they have already done. An attempt at an unprepared descent in such a situation risks a second victim. And this is the hardest part of waiting, when everything no longer depends on you, but on people hurrying towards you across the winter slopes of Yorkshire. The first CRO members descended the Dicken pitch down the same line as the casualty. They crossed the traverse, reached the pitch head, and went down to its base through the spray and the crash of water. What they saw there did not match the group's first fear. The casualty was not hanging on the rope. He was at the bottom of the pitch, right at its base. The rescuers examined him and found no signs of life. The picture was unambiguous. The man had not become suspended. He had fallen, from a height of around 30 meters to the bottom of the pitch. This changed the meaning of that sharp impact the group had heard at 27 minutes past noon. Now everything fell into a single picture, a fall. What from above had looked like a possible hang on the gear turned out at the bottom to be death from a fall. From there, the rescuers followed the protocol that always kicks in when a person is found dead underground. The scene was recorded for the police, the position of the body, the surroundings at the base of the pitch, the state of the rope and the gear. This is not a suspicion of anyone's guilt, but a mandatory step, the way facts are gathered for the inquiry and for the coroner. British sources say it plainly. There was nothing criminal here. After recording the scene, the hardest, purely human part of the work began. The CRO people did it the way they always do, by the rules, allowing themselves no haste that might cause harm. So ended the uncertainty in which the group at the top had remained. The answer to their question turned out to be the worst possible one. The body was carefully placed in a rescue stretcher. This is a special rigid stretcher in which a casualty is firmly secured, so they can be raised vertically without being knocked against the walls. Even the preparation for the haul, in a tight water-flooded pitch, is no simple task. Raising a person out of a vertical pitch is considered one of the most difficult operations in all of caving. The stretcher cannot simply be pulled up with a rope. It has to be guided upward carefully, meter by meter, along the same line as the descent. On the way are those very rebeles and deviations that help a person on an ordinary descent, but that, when hauling a stretcher, turn into obstacles to be passed one at a time. The rescuers spread out across different levels of the pitch. Some haul, others accompany the stretcher. Others watch that the rope doesn't catch on the edges of rock and that the stretcher passes each anchor point smoothly, all of it under the jet of water, in the cold, in the tightness of the stone tube. Coordination matters more than strength here. One movement out of sync can stall the whole haul. Meter by meter, the stretcher rose to the pitch head, then across the traverse to the exit. At last, the dead man was carried out to the surface. There, the paramedics of the Yorkshire ambulance service were already waiting. They examined him and confirmed death. There was nothing more to be done. The rescuers also brought the rest of the group up, those who had spent several hours at the edge of the pitch, powerless to help their companion. For them, a winter's day in the Dales ended in a way no ordinary trip ever does. The operation was complete. The police confirmed there were no suspicious circumstances, and it became clear the matter would proceed along the coroner's line, with the preparation of an official report on the cause of death. There remained the question that always arises after such tragedies. What exactly had gone wrong on the first pitch of Dicken? Here it's important to draw a clear line between what is known for certain and what remains a theory. Officially, the cause of death is a fall from the first pitch of Dicken. The precise mechanism of that fall was established by the coroner in a separate inquiry, and it is his findings, not guesses, that carry the weight of fact. And yet the situation itself allows us to outline a range of explanations, with the obligatory note that these are theories. The most obvious one concerns the vertical rope. The sharp impact, followed by tension, fits the picture of a fall during the descent. The cause could have been a failure of equipment or a mistake in handling it, say, on a rebele, when a person suspended in the air transfers their weight from one anchor to another. A slip-up right at the start of the descent, at the pitch head, could also have played a part. The conditions of that day amplified any of these risks. The January water is cold and plentiful, and everything for which this pitch is sadly famous cut into the safety margin that, in a dry training hall, seems large. Nor can we rule out that the physical strain of hanging on the rope, in the cold, at the age of 64, added its share. But this too is only a theory, not an established fact. One thing is firmly confirmed, and all the sources confirm it. The man fell and died at the bottom of the first pitch. He was experienced. He was in a group, in a cave whose reputation he knew, and yet he did not come back. Everything else, the exact cause of the fall, exactly what failed or went wrong, remains within the scope of the investigation. Cavers know this rule well. Not every tragedy underground gets a clear-cut answer, and it's more honest to name the limit of what is known than to invent a neat theory. Dicken Pot left behind exactly such a limit. The fall is confirmed, and its precise mechanics are a question answered by documents, not by conjecture. Let's look at the cave as an adversary. Dicken Pot is, in its own way, a beautiful place, an underground waterfall, sheer walls, a darkness ringing with water. For a well-prepared caver, it's a reward worth enduring the cold and the wet for. And this same cave forgives almost nothing. The first pitch here is a concentrate of danger. It brings together several factors at once, each of which is manageable on its own, but together they form a very narrow field where there is no room for error. A sheer 30-meter drop, constant water hammering on the rope and the person. Cold that strips the feeling from your hands, darkness in which any slip is harder to spot and correct. A weak point in the safety system, a wrong move on a rebele, a second's inattention, and the margin to put it all right simply runs out. Add to this the treacherous geometry of the entrance. On an ordinary day, the fact that a bulge separates the pitch head from the observer is merely an inconvenience. In an emergency, it became a critical obstacle. It was precisely this blindness that stopped the companions from understanding at once what had happened and coming to help instantly. Between the impact and the rescuers' real actions, time inevitably passed. British cavers have long known the price of Dicken Pot. It is not considered a place for an easy stroll. Its rules about dry weather, about the water, about technique, are spoken of directly and firmly. This cave demands respect, and most of those who go into it show that respect. The community made no sensation out of what had happened. The death of an experienced man in a cave known for its harshness was received more as a heavy reminder of how quickly a familiar descent, repeated hundreds of times, can become irreversible. Not because anyone was careless, but because underground, by a roaring pitch, the line between an ordinary day and a disaster is thinner than it looks from the surface. Now, for the bigger picture, the statistics of the Yorkshire Underground over many years. Alum Pot, of which Dicken is a part, is among the most deadly caves in the Dales. Over its history, it has claimed around 8 lives. For a single system, that is a lot. Alum Pot is also tied to a particular grim episode. In 1936, Mabel Binks died here. She became the first documented caving fatality in the Yorkshire Dales, the cause being a rock that fell into the main shaft. That incident is, in effect, where the region's sorrowful record begins. The gravest tragedy of the Dales happened in another cave, in Mossdale Caverns in 1967. A sudden flood cut off a group underground, and 6 people could not get out. For British caving, that catastrophe became a symbol of how quickly water turns a cave into a trap, and it largely shaped the modern culture of caution. If you look at the causes of British caving deaths as a whole, a consistent picture emerges. Most often, death is linked to water, especially if you count cave diving. After that come falls, like in Dicken and rock falls. More rarely, hypothermia and natural causes underground. And yet behind the dry figures lies something important. Modern British caving is statistically safe. With thousands of active cavers and tens of thousands of people trained in caves every year, there are years when nobody dies. Death underground in Britain today is a rarity. And that is precisely why every such case is so conspicuous and so hard for the community to bear. The death at Dicken Pot in January 2025 added to this long but very slowly growing list. It joined the ranks of names that Yorkshire cavers have remembered for decades, and it reminded them once more, the underground world, for all its beauty, remains deadly serious. There remains one man and one quiet fact. A 64-year-old man from the Durham area went underground on an ordinary winter Sunday and did not come back out himself. He was descending into a cave he knew, in trusted company, using a well-practiced technique, and yet 1 second at the first pitch of Dicken cut everything short. There is no villain in this story, no intent, no one else's guilt, no mystery to be solved. There is only depth, water, and cold. The police confirmed there were no suspicious circumstances, the case went to the coroner, and the official cause remained a fall from the first pitch. The rescuers of the Cave Rescue Organization brought him up gently, the way you bring up your own. To them, he was not a stranger. Underground, everyone who goes into caves belongs, in a sense, to the same circle. They did the one thing that still remained to be done. They returned him to the surface, to the daylight, out of which he had stepped into the darkness a few hours before. His name did not become a news headline. British sources left him simply a man from the Durham area, without a public name, but with a clear fate. He was where he wanted to be, in a cave to which, by all appearances, he had given a considerable part of his life. For many cavers, that is the last thing that can be said about such a passing. He died doing what he loved. Dicken Pot did not change after that Sunday. It remained just as it had been for thousands of years, roaring, wet, dark, indifferent to the people who descend into it. Water still falls down the first pitch, ropes still hang right up against the jet, and the traverse still hides from those at the top what is happening below. There are no loud conclusions or morals here, only a man, the depths, and the price of a single movement in the dark, a quiet reminder of how serious the world beneath our feet can be.